thank you for joining me. I'm joined by some of the cast and crew of the wonderful documentary Well Rounded. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Carrie, and I'm editor-in-chief of Diva Magazine. My pronouns are she and they, and I will leave my lovely guests to introduce themselves.
I'll go first. It's so nice to have dead air on a Zoom interview. I'm Shanna Miera. I'm the director of this film called Well Rounded.
I'm Lydia Okello. I'm one of the subjects of the documentary, and I am a digital creator, a writer, and a model.
So first of all, for those who haven't seen the film, you probably should just shut this off and go and watch it because it is it's really, really wonderful. Let's start by talking about how it came to be, how you two met each other, and how this film came to life.
Oh, sure. Well, I cold called Lydia, basically, after finding them on the interwebs and scrolling through Instagram, feeling super delighted. I was looking to make a documentary, my first documentary. If you hear some grumbles in the background, it's my big stinky dog. I really just wanted to give myself a project where I could tease out some of these understandings I've had for most of my life, where if someone challenged me on my body or made me feel bad about my body, it did feel like a bit of attack on my family. And I never really understood the relationship. So by the time I wanted to make a film, I thought, follow the advice that some of my writing mentors have always given me, which is do something that terrifies you. And this really did terrify me. It's we keep coming back to this notion of coming out as fat. And so it's been a lot of that kind of coming out and having these conversations of revealing that not only am I fine with my body, I'm unapologetic about my body. It goes against everything I've been taught. And I keep waiting every time I say it for someone to come along and shame me or mansplain to me or whatever. But so in looking for ways to explore that, I thought, well, let's find these public people who have already done the work, who are putting themselves out there. And then I found Stylist Style and Lydia doing their fashion work.
So yeah, that cold call, what was that like for you? Were you excited, terrified, intrigued, all of the above?
I would say all of the above. I was mostly just like very, very excited though that somebody was making a film about queer people who were fat and who were people of color, because that's something that I, when I was younger, just like didn't really see, at least in like the environments that I was in. I didn't even know how many folks there were out there who were like me. And I was just like so excited to be a part of it, and whatever Shanna wanted, I was like, I'm in, just tell me where to be.
So how did the kind of process of the film then, the interviews, was that Shannon, were you interviewing Lydia and the other cast members?
I was, and actually, I mean, probably it's obvious. It was a pretty DIY effort. My first film, I think we got some very beautiful photography, but when you think about how much time we took for the interviews, it was a very small amount of time. And it really just speaks to the openness and the loveliness of the vibe from my perspective. On set, that people came in just so candid and so frank and kind of full of this sense of community and sharing. And I think we got to some really difficult places. People really wanted to share, I think how harrowing it's been needlessly to live in these bodies, and really also wanted to share some of the joy and some of the process of, how to feel happy in these bodies as well. But definitely, everyone seemed to sort of naturally go in both directions, right? Like not wanting to hide from the bad stuff and also wanting to show that we're not necessarily always going to live in that place if we're privileged enough to be able to do that.
Yeah. It's in you sort of touched on some of the notes I've made around like how difficult it was to find that balance between joy and anger and pain and all of those things. Lydia, you talk in the film about some of your experiences at 16, feeling suicidal, you know, but it wasn't, you didn't find it then difficult to find that balance. It would sort of naturally happened.
Yeah, I think for me, a big part of my like journey of like body acceptance and kind of like body positivity or body neutrality is addressing that like it's not always going to feel great, and you still live in a world that is inherently fat phobic, so you're going to experience that that sort of external negativity, but that doesn't mean that your entire life experience should be negative. And I think the documentary did a really great job of kind of showcasing all of that. And one thing I really enjoyed just as like a person in the film or watching the film was that all 4 of our stories are totally different. And I think that folks might come into the doc thinking, okay, I kind of know what I'm going to get here. And it was so uplifting and refreshing to see, you know, like fat folks are all different because they're people, queer folks are all different, people of color are all different. And to be able to see all of those stories in one place as just like a sort of a mirror of the types of folks that I know, that really made me so proud to be a part of the project as well, because it's not, my experience is not a sob story, yeah, but I have had hardships in my experience, and I don't feel the need to negate those. I think that both can exist. So I think for me, it was just like so great to be a part of a project where they wanted to explore both of those sides, or explore a more full picture of what my experience was, or what like a fat experience can be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Shanna, I was amazed with how much ground you managed to cover within, I mean, it's 60 minutes, isn't it? You know, there was a history lesson, there was science, there was these really well-rounded personal stories of intersecting identities and the kind of nuances of what it is to be a queer fat person. How did you do it? How did you make it so cover so much, but make it so accessible and not feel that you were trying to cram in too much?
Well, I was aware of the pitfall of maybe trying to cram in too much. I'm a writer, so I came at this, I transcribed every interview, and I really came at this as kind of like a found writing exercise. And it's really quite exceptional when you see it on the page and trying to blend stories. But it did seem like I kind of wanted it to feel like we were all in the same room together, just having a big old gab fest. And so everybody got their turn. There was a lot of great stuff that I couldn't fit in the documentary because it was just too challenging, and you have to try and think of people holding focus. But for me, the stories just, they touched on so many kind of related themes, because I think we've all kind of lived through some similar experiences, but of course, all of the perspectives were not the same. And I found that really exciting. I also found using the animation to be quite exciting too, because it was able to kind of lift us into this contemplative and beautiful place that we didn't get a chance to film in that way. We filmed it in such a hurry with these interviews. So yeah, I think looking at it as kind of a piece of writing in some ways is what helped me kind of really keep a lot of the dialogue. There's a lot of talking in the film, and my hope was that it was so beautiful to look at as well, that the words would just fall over you and you would really fall in love with all these characters. Yeah. I certainly have. I feel like I say this every time I see Lydia or any of the cast. I feel like they have been my hugest therapy in life. So I thought I went into this being fairly positive about my body and having done a lot of the work. But there is something so powerful about having these conversations publicly and meeting these people who have done the work, and we can talk about it with each other. And with a lot of my friends and family, we still can't. And there's and pouring over Lydia's words and pouring over the other folks in the film's words, it's just, I don't know, it puts a spring in your step. You feel like you have a cool community of people behind you. So even if you're in a room with people who don't get it, you automatically think of this other community that is way better.
It's interesting you were talking earlier about sort of coming out as a fat person. I think for me that's a journey that I'm very much still on, like trying to own that, to publicly say that that's something I identify as. And I think this film has really helped me along that journey to advance the work, as it were. And you've touched there on some of what you've learned about yourself, Shayna, in the process. I wondered if you could expand on that a little bit about other things that you've learned about yourself in the process, and Lydia, you as well, what you've learned about yourself through meeting the other subjects and the process of the documentary coming together.
You want me to jump in first, Lydia?
I'll let you go first.
There are so many ways that I've kind of come to understand myself a little bit better through this film. I think a lot of it relates back to, for me, a lot of it relates back to my family. So I understand kind of in relation to other folks. I'm smaller than a lot of people who identify as fat, although I'm still kind of grappling with that in my mind because I have always felt like the largest person in any room, but it's not true. It's just it's my perception. And I do hold privilege in lots of spaces because I can fit into some clothes in regular stores. I don't think I get the same level of hate out on the street that someone who is much larger than me would experience. And a lot of it makes me kind of go back to understanding my family and our roots. And I don't want to get into eugenics or weird territory, but people from different places have different body shapes, and we've celebrated and known those body shapes for a long time. And it's really kind of part and parcel of Western imperialism, something that Edward Said wrote about, that so much of Western media has shaped the world understanding of their bodies right now. So, my family, because they were so disconnected from their homeland. My mom, we don't really even know where she's from because of a very complex Holocaust history. But my dad's family have been Moroccan Jews for generations and generations, as far back as we can trace. But he was very disconnected from Morocco once we moved to Canada. And in some ways that meant that his sensibility was locked in time. And so in our whole family was shaped by this notion that being round was fine. Like, we would joke about our bodies in this very loving way, and it was very accepted, and it just felt like part of our culture. And so to be outside the family and to have people ridicule how we looked felt very, it made me feel protective of my family, as well as, sad and rejected and all of those things. So I've done a lot of thinking on those lines, and it brought me to this film, and it brought me to understanding critiques of the body mass index and how the body mass index was created by, a white Belgian man, not incorporating women's bodies at all, but not incorporating other culture's bodies at all, and completely flawed, and the basis of how we understand who is healthy and unhealthy to this day. Terrible. I'll stop talking now and throw it over to Lydia. I'm losing my train of thought.
BMI. That's like a whole other
documentary.
Yes, exactly. I think for me, one of the really affirming parts of the film actually was the work of Dr. Janet, and also, I'm forgetting the other person's name.
Dr. Jenny Ellison?
Yes, Dr. Jenny as well. Both of them had such interesting insights. Both of them had such a breadth of knowledge, and because I'm kind of a dork that way, I love being able to be like, this is what the research shows, this is what like academia shows. And I felt like for people who maybe feel a bit skeptical or don't necessarily understand that there are many people who their bodies would be large regardless of any efforts that they take, any extreme efforts that they take, regardless of their activity level, etc. I think having both of their viewpoints in the film really underscored that in a way that I really appreciated, because sometimes it can feel limiting to just tell people your personal experience, because folks can sometimes perceive that as an opinion, not fact. So to have kind of the facts behind us, and also to touch on how particularly like medically fat people suffer not because of their body size, but because of actually the fat phobia within medicine. And that was so affirming, especially because for me, it kind of came at a time where I was going through all of that and experiencing, you know, the medical system and trying to navigate that. And I felt so much affirmation and confidence, knowing, okay, I know I'm going into this, and I know that like these are some things I'm going to encounter, and I should feel good advocating for myself, because I know that more likely than not, being fat is not the cause of what is happening in my body. It is just part of the state of my body. So for me, that piece of the doc, alongside obviously hearing so many different stories, that really, I found that really affirming, and I was really excited to have those voices as well, to just kind of, you know, fill in the gaps for folks who, like me, just want some, you know, little facts there, some little research happening.
Yeah, it's interesting, Sheena, you said about you know, people might come into this documentary thinking that they know this story, and you know, they won't be surprised by anything. I certainly was surprised and by some of the things, Lydia, you mentioned there around, you know, sort of being armed with some of those facts that you can then sort of use to bolster, you know, when you go out into the world as a fat person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a real education, but in a very lovely, joyful, colourful package. I wanted to talk a little bit about the visuals. It was interesting to me that you said this was very DIY, very rushed, you know, because I thought it looked really slick and really beautiful. I wondered if you could talk about some of the visual decisions that you made around the color and the animations and things.
Oh, thank you. I know I shouldn't be allowed to air my insecurities about the film publicly. It's who I am. Yeah, my decision was color. I mean, look at the people that we're interviewing, a racialized cast, like very diverse in terms of everyone's, you know, from everywhere. And kind of pluralism is the theme, you know, like different body shapes in this world makes this a more interesting world. Like, let's rebel from all of this monochrome kind of ideal that we've been dealing with all of our lives. Yeah, and so we just leaned into color, and we had so many colors as a base, kind of starting from Lydia's interview in front of that colorful cabinet, and so we stole a lot of those colors. And then Alexandra Honer, who's actually in the UK, who I've never met in person, is the animator, who did some sample drawings of all the subjects, and I sent them around, and people liked them or didn't, and then we tweaked them, and then I think everyone was pretty happy with how they turned out otherwise. But really, yeah, joy, I think part of the joy in the film too is a lot of that color, and then being outside, and Lydia's colorful pink kind of frock, and then being in, you know, kind of making the decision to eat ice cream on camera too. As a part of that was an element of rebellion and joy and color.
And it was good ice cream, so bonus.
Yeah, it is a real joyful, almost like a call to arms, I think, to take up space, to start this, not start, but to continue this sort of resistance, as queer fat people. That was certainly, that's what some of what I took from it. What do you hope other viewers, people who are watching Well Rounded from Flare, what do you hope they might take? What message do you hope will stay with them?
I hope they'll take a sense of defiance. I think for me, when Dr. Janet Tomiyama said that weight was as heritable as height, that was like a punch in my face. I was so surprised that she said that. In my whole life, I have never heard that before. Mm-hmm. And she's so poised, and she's so fierce. And, you know, as an academic, she has to state her facts calmly and be prepared to defend them, but she doesn't speak with this sort of like, it's a, you know, and I feel like she could have said, we should be yelling this from the rooftops. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. So I think when we start thinking about it that way, it does go back to being part of our family and part of, you know, part of our inheritance. And if we start thinking of the world as more beautiful because of our differences, then I think we'll just eliminate a whole lot of needless shame, and we can just get on with doing some good in the world. So I hope people, yeah, I would wrap it up with defiance. I hope people can feel defiantly proud and liberated after this film.
Mm-hmm. And of course, you know, I think with a film like this, there's a risk of criticism. There's a risk of, you know, some of the concern trolling that is covered in the film, that they will sort of be drawn towards this. Are your skins thick? Are you sort of prepared for that, or how will you cope when if they find the film?
Well, I feel, I want to hear what Lydia has to say, but I feel I don't like trolls. I don't particularly enjoy criticism. I don't particularly enjoy when men, like, I'm picking on men, but you know, look at who the trolls are in the world. When men drop a scathing line, like we could all learn a little bit from them. When they see something different and they say it's wrong, I'm just completely tired of that. And I just don't want to deal with it. I want to get on with my life. I'm releasing a book next year. I have a little bit more to write. And my partner and I are working on another animated film that it'll be released 2 years from now. I need to work. I need to not listen to assholes out there, which is not to say I'm not open to feedback and I'm not open to learning. Mm-hmm. But you know, the pithy people that need to prove that they're witty and strong on other people's backs, done with it. What do you think, Lydia?
I mean, I just feel like I just don't care. Like, and that's not to say that it doesn't, that it can't hurt me, because sometimes it does hurt. But I don't know. I think especially right now, where I am mostly in my home and I mostly interact with like the people I'm close with online, particularly, like I just don't have room for bullshit. And I just am like, I just don't care. Like, I'm like, I don't care about your opinion. If you don't like it, you don't need to look at it. Just like I'm not looking at you. Like, I just don't, I don't know. I think I kind of am at that point of like, and
I aspire to that. Yeah. Fantastic. What, apart from this film, what are you watching at Fleer? What have been some of your highlights?
Oh, that's a terrible question because I haven't watched much at all. We've been dealing with some terrible toxic work in my apartment. So we had to flee during COVID and it was terrifying. So I haven't watched anything. We had to go and stay somewhere with my dog. It has not been a watching time for us. But everything looks great.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jump Darling looks great. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everything looks great. I haven't had a chance to watch anything either. I don't know if we're able to stream it in Canada. I need to look into that a little bit further. But weirdly, I've had like a pretty intense couple of weeks, like work-wise, so I haven't been able to catch anything, but I'm hoping to, because there's just like such a great volume, and especially not being able to go to the movies in person, it's so exciting to see really new and beautiful work, especially from queer people. So we'll have to make my list.
The program does look great, and it's you know, as someone who lives in Vancouver, I've actually been to BFI Fleer twice. I've flown there twice when I worked as a film programmer here. It was and it was definitely a destination festival. When I started submitting this film to festivals, that was it was very high up there on the list of my wish list. So it's been such a special experience screening with them, and their staff are amazing, and it's the best I've ever been treated at any festival. So high bar.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And for those who, like me, will absolutely fall in love with this film and will no doubt want to find out what you're both up to, where can they find out more? What are you up to, and how can we support you?
Well, thank you. Well, Lydia's really got such a huge following online. I'm on Instagram, but I'm terrible at social media. But I'm at Sha Nami on Instagram. And then there's Lydia.
I am at Style is Style on all platforms. So if you search that or search Lydia Okello, I should be the one who comes up. But I'm just like doing modeling, doing kind of digital creation. So Instagram is kind of like the main place that I do my work. And I also do writing as well. So whenever I have like articles or pieces coming up, I'll link to that on all of my socials. So yeah, if you look up Style is Style, all one word, that should be me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for making this film, for taking the time to talk to me and to the Diva community. It's been a real pleasure, and good luck with everything in the future.
Thank you so much, Carrie. We really appreciate your love for the film and taking time with us and sharing news about the film through Divas Network. So thank you.
Pleasure.